What's up guys, Rab here, back at it with another tournament vlog. Now I know my face may say otherwise, but it'd been about a month since my last tournament and I was really looking forward to getting some more games played. Playing in tabletop sim is one thing, but actually physically playing against someone and moving the pieces, a whole different beast, much more fun. So I was off to Geek Retreat in Glasgow for Return of the Geek for 4 games at 550 points. And I decided to take a new army. I took Isengard. So here was my list at 550 points. I had Lurtz, who is my leader, 7 warriors with shield, 7 warriors with pike, and a banner. And you'll notice that my banner is my Morannon one because I don't have an Isengard banner. Got Vrasku with 4 crossbows, Mahur with 8 marauders with shield, and 4 marauders without shield. And this little guy here is Rue, who Jade and I adopted a couple of weeks ago. He's a wee French bulldog. Unfortunately, he can't come to the tournament today, so he's staying at home with Jade. I do enjoy these Geek Retreat events because it is my friendly local game store, and the events aren't official GBHL ones, although I know the TO was working towards that. It just makes it a little bit more friendly and not as competitive, so people can run unpainted models or proxies and no one really minds. It also means you don't get guys flying in from other countries to win points. Nah, I'm just kidding, but events like this are great for people still learning the game who maybe aren't confident enough to go to an official event and bother people with not knowing the full rules. It's a great learning experience, and it's also a great opportunity for people like me to maybe win their first prize. Foreshadowing. So, straight into the games. The first game was Destroy the Supplies against Jamie, who's a good friend of the channel. Hi Jamie. He brought his fiefdoms army, which was led by Forlong, as well as a captain. He'd also allied in Rohan, so he allied in Gambling and Dernhelm, and he had a little side bet on the go. He wanted to see how many points of might Mary could use whilst Gambling was still regenerating them at the end of every turn. I think he got 15 against me. For the first couple of turns, I just advanced my forces up the board. Lurtz's company at the back, moving a little bit slower than those marauders closer to me, and my crossbows just sitting in the middle, and we traded some shots for the first couple of turns. Now, Black Root Vale archers have a rule where if they're under the influence of a heroic shoot, they get to reroll failed to wounds, and with Jamie having Mary with 1 point of might, and Gambling, who restores might when you've lost your last point, he had pretty much an infinite supply of re-rolling failed to wounds, so I had to charge my units in closer. We got into combat. Jamie called a heroic combat with his Dol Amroth captain and 3 of his warriors against 1 lone Uruk, and somehow managed to lose the heroic combat and an axeman in the process. Dernhelm had also called a combat which she won and killed the Uruk she was fighting before charging into another 2 and killing them both as well. This would be a good time to add that that Dernhelm model is actually mine, which I've loaned Jamie for the day. It's not painted because I've not bothered painting it. Then it was time for the big fight of the round, Mahur versus Gambling. I was hoping to take Gambling off the board early to get rid of this infinite source of might, but unfortunately the dice were not in my favour and Gambling killed Mahur in 1 turn of combat. On the next turn, Jamie won priority, and unfortunately without Mahur I couldn't call a heroic move to move first, so I had to let him surround all of my remaining marauders with his cavalry and units. However, I did call a heroic shoot with Vrasku to let him and his crossbow boys shoot first, and we managed to take out all of Jamie's remaining archers. Jamie called a heroic combat with Dernhelm, which he won and used to slingshot her into my half of the board and pretty close to the supplies. He then used the rest of his troops, including Gambling and his captain, to wipe up the last of my marauders. Now you might be asking what's happening on the other side of the board. Not much. Rather stupidly, looking back at it and actually asking Jamie after the game, I moved my troops far too slow on the other side of the table. I was moving them 3 inches at a time so Lurtz could get 1 extra shot, which did nothing, and I really should have just pushed them in, sort of half-arsing it, whether stuck between defending my supplies and attacking the other supplies just doesn't work. You've got to either sit back completely or just go full out, and I left it far too late and end up missing the fight. And at that point, Jamie had already taken one of my supplies and surrounded Frasco and his crossbow boys, who were holding the second one, and I was still sort of flip-flopping about what to do with the main force of my army. The next turn was just a tale of failed heroic combat as Frasco called one, hoping to beat an outrider and get onto the objective to stop Dernhelm from burning at that turn. He failed. Lurtz called one, hoping to beat a single warrior and push onto one of Jamie's objectives and a chance of burning that the next turn. He failed that as well. Now this is where my hesitation to move Lurtz's warband up the board really came back to bite me hard. I was running out of time and I was just unable to get through his troops and get onto any of the supplies to burn them and score some victory points. So the game ended soon after with Jamie winning 7-1. Game 2, I was playing Domination against Connor, and he had quite an unusual list. He had Galadriel as his leader, Aragorn on horse, Merry on pony, a bunch of hobbits and some elves backing them up. So quite a strange memey list, but Aragorn on horse is not to be sniffed at. I know who's going to cause me problems all day long. On the first turn, Connor was able to get Aragorn into combat with a couple of my marauders, and then using his 3 point of might to call a heroic combat was able to win that and slingshot himself into Maher before causing a wound on him as well. In the next turn I decided to do the same, calling a heroic combat with Lurtz, hoping to kill a couple of troops before moving up to Galadriel, hopefully inflict a wound or two and earn some VPs. In the resulting duel, Lurtz actually lost the fight against the unarmed Galadriel. Luckily she inflicted no wounds and he only had to back away. Across the middle of the board where the lines clashed, we went model for model, proving that hobbits, when they have spear support from elves anyway, are just as killy as Uruk-hai. Aragorn charged Mahur, who was still prone after being knocked to the ground in the last turn, and killed him before killing the troops that I had tried to surround him with as well. In the next turn, Aragorn used that 3 point of might to call another combat, which he used to charge Lurtz. So it's going to be Lurtz versus Galadriel, Merry, Aragorn, and an elf for support as well. Miraculously, with the help of a heroic strike, Lurtz actually won the combat and was able to inflict a wound upon Galadriel, which is very important for victory points. No other reason. Across the rest of the round, it pretty much went 50-50. That band of marauders I've got on the lower right corner of the screen won most of their fights and cleaned up pretty well. However, the main force of troops, Connor's hobbits supported by elves with their higher fight value, did quite a bit of damage to my numbers. At the start of the next round, we took a break to consult the rules because we wanted to know if Aragorn's sword, not Anduril, his regular sword, is a hand and a half sword, because in pretty much every scene of the film you see him two-handing his sword as well as all the promotional material, but in the rulebooks it's just down as a sword, a single-handed sword, so there's no option for him to two-hand his sword. Perhaps a slight oversight by the MESBG rules committee, maybe one for the FAQs. Lurtz wasn't as lucky this time round, however. After being charged by Aragorn, Galadriel and a couple of elves, he did go down to 1 wound and 0 fate remaining. When Merry survived being trapped by 3 Uruk-hai, I could tell this wasn't going to be my game, maybe even my day. This was compounded when his hobbits killed even more of my Uruk-hai over the course of the turn. Aragorn called his inevitable free heroic combat, which he used to chew through even more of my troops, leaving Lurtz at the mercy of Galadriel and some elves. Incredibly, with the help of shielding, Lurtz won the combat, stood up and dusted himself off. With time running out, the game was incredibly close. We both held one objective each, with the middle objective being hotly contested. We both had points for wounding each other's leaders, and Connor had broken my force. All he had to do to end the game was kill one more of my units. He rolled to kill the unit that was holding the middle objective, and won. The game was over, and Connor won 7-4. Game 3, I was up against Donald, who actually recognised me from the channel. That was the first time this ever happened, so I was quite blown away and quite surprised. But, you know, good publicity, I guess. Maybe. Donald had brought his Rivendell list, which had Elrond, a couple of knights, and Glorfindel, and some warriors and bowmen, archers as well. We were playing the Fog of War, which is my absolute favourite scenario. We have to capture a terrain piece, kill a hero that's not the leader, and protect one of your heroes, not your leader. I chose to try and kill Glorfindel, who was his only choice really, because I can't kill his leader, Elrond. I chose to take the bottom right hand corner. There's the little building, that building there, and I chose to protect Vrasku, who I thought would be sitting at the back of the map taking shots anyway. He would be perfectly safe back there, hopefully. Learning from mistakes made in previous games, I wasted no time in marching my army up the board. Vrasku and his crossbows actually managed to shoot Elrond off of his horse as well, which was a minor win considering he wasn't really my target, but it would stop him getting into all of my troops. On to the fight phase, and Glorfindel called a heroic combat, and I could see what he was trying to do. He was trying to get into Mahur, so I called a heroic strength with Mahur because he doesn't have strike, unfortunately, which might keep him out of my future lists. Glorfindel won his combat against his lone Uruk, slingshot into Mahur and won that combat as well before inflicting one wound on Mahur using his only point of fate. Into the next turn, Donald won priority using Elrond's foresight points and charged Mahur with Glorfindel again, continuing that onslaught. The rest of the battle lines clashed, and I managed to surround most of his elves with my outnumbering marauders. In the shooting phase, Vrasku and his crossbow boys managed to kill a knight who looked like he was looking for a specific point on the map, maybe somewhere to score some victory points. With his cavalry charge, Glorfindel managed to finish Mahur off before killing another Uruk as well, just as the icing on top. He was really becoming a problem. It was just as well he was my target, if I could kill him, that is. Despite me outnumbering him, the rest of the fights were pretty much a stalemate with a lot of backing away and not a lot of killing. At the beginning of the next turn, I won priority, but Donald decided to use his last foresight point to take it off of me. I called a heroic movement with Lurtz. He decided to counter with Elrond. I won the roll off, so I would move half of my troops first, then he would move the rest of his. That was complicated. With the rest of the movement phase, Donald charged his troops into mine before charging Glorfindel into my banner, which was very cheeky. I had one Uruk who was not tied up in combat, so I managed to sneak him into the little building here. No prizes for guessing, but that was a terrain piece that I was trying to capture. In the shooting phase, I called a heroic accuracy with Vrasku. This is something that I've got in the habit of doing in my practice games. It allows you to re-roll in the ways, so it's really handy when you're shooting into combat or shooting at a cavalry, because you can re-roll to hit the horse or the rider. I shot all 5 crossbow bolts at Glorfindel, hitting his horse twice. He used 2 fate points and managed to avoid the horse dying, but he was down to 1 fate. In the combat phase, Donald called a heroic combat of Elrond, hoping to get into Lurtz. In response, I used a heroic strike on Lurtz. However, Elrond was unable to kill a single trapped Uruk-hai, so he stayed where he was. Into the big fight of the round, it was Lurtz and some support versus Glorfindel. Bear in mind, I needed to kill Glorfindel to win some victory points. I used heroic strike to strike up to fight 10, meaning that I would win any draws. Donald rolled a 6, I rolled a 5. I used Lurtz's last point of might to turn that 5 into a 6 and win the fight. After dishing out the strikes with Lurtz and his support, I inflicted 2 wounds, so Glorfindel was able to fate one of them, leaving him with 0 fate, 0 might and 1 wound. He was ready for the taking. Donald won the next priority, and I had no might left to counter anywhere close. The only person I had left with might was Vrasku, so he managed to run Glorfindel as far away from the trouble as possible. However, I decided to let him go because I had some crossbows left and I was hoping that I could maybe snipe him off his horse. However, I missed every shot. Going into the last round, Donald was unable to get Glorfindel or his other Rivendell Knight onto the terrain piece he was trying to capture, and I really needed to finish off Glorfindel. I shot at him with all my crossbows, knocked him off his horse, but was unable to deliver a killing blow. In what was an incredibly fun back and forth match, I managed to wound my target, keep my hero completely unscathed, and take my terrain piece, earning 10 points. Donald was able to kill Mahur, who was his target, and keep Glorfindel alive, so he got 4, so it was a 10-4 victory to me. But yeah, once again, fantastic game, great fun. On to the last game of the day, game 4, and it was to the death versus Henry and his Angmar force. Now, Henry had brought the Witch King of Angmar, obviously, a Barrow Wight, a Troll, a Deadmar Spectre and a bunch of Orcs. Now, I didn't know that Angmar's army bonus, until I played Henry of course, was that any Orc within 3 inches of a Spirit hero model gets Terror. Now, Terror and Uruk-hai is a bad mix because most of my Uruk-hai are Courage 3, and if they're within 12 inches of the Witch King, it goes down to Courage 2. So they need to roll an 8 on 2 dice in order to charge any of these models that are within 3 inches of a hero. Also, the Witch King and the Trolls cause Terror as well. Moving up the board, I was really struggling to get numbers into the fights because of this Terror. Spoiler alert, this will continue for the rest of the game. To add to my problems, the Witch King was mounted on a horse and he was doing his best to stay as far away from possible or hidden from my crossbows, so I had to keep moving the crossbows, meaning I wasn't getting any shots away as well. The fights themselves were pretty grindy, with my Uruk-hai managing to kill Orcs when they got into combat with them, but getting into the combat was the hard part. Henry also made good use of his Paralyze and the Compel-like ability that Barrow-wights have to move some of my heroes and just straight up paralyze Lurtz. I neglected to mention that Henry also had a wild warg chieftain which caused Terror, and a couple of wargs as well, and they were chewing through my troops. Now, unfortunately, about 3/4 of the way through the match, my camera died, but it felt like it was about a 4-hour long game. This was a real grind, having to constantly roll courage checks to charge pretty much any unit, and then when you get into a fight, it was pretty even what way it was going to go. I was unable to get even close to the Witch King. He's just too fast and was flying away or running away from all of my crossbows, but it was a really good game despite it being incredibly frustrating. This is a great list that Henry has put together, and I'm sure he'll do well with it in future. Hopefully courage tests aren't a major stumbling block for me going forward, but yeah, great game, and it ended 8-4 to Henry, so that would take me to 3 losses and 1 win for the day. Was it enough for a podium? Probably not, but I was going to win something anyway. And that was it for another fine day. Fine in the sense of getting to play games with your friends, not fine in the sense of results. Fine day of Middle Earth strategy battle game. It was great fun. I really enjoyed just a nice day playing some games, making some new friends, and learning a lot to hopefully take forward into the next tournament. Winners: Jamie came first, Jamie that played in game 1, Alex Bordas came second, and Henry came third, Henry that played in game 4. So I played 2 of the podium winners. Alex won Best Painted for his Keeper of the Dungeons, which is a fantastic looking model. I'm going to link Alex's Instagram so you go and have a look at his stuff as well. He's an incredible painter. And finally, the award we've all been waiting for, the best award of the tournament, Most Sporting, went to me.
Not sure how. I think it's because the only people left at the end were people that had played against me, so I won it. I'm not going to complain, it's my first ever trophy, so I'll take that. I won some very nice limited edition 2 Towers stamps, which I will use to write an angry letter to Games Workshop to ask them to release more Lord of the Rings minis. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I will hopefully have another one out in the next couple of weeks. I've got another tournament this coming weekend, so once I get back and have played some Starfield, I'll get that video out as well. Until then, take care.